Welcome back to Plantopia. Plantopia is the plant health podcast of the American Phytopathological Society, and I'm your host, Matt Kasson. I'm an associate professor of forest pathology and mycology at West Virginia University. This is the 7th episode of Season 5, and today I'm excited to welcome Dr. Bob Kemerait, professor of plant pathology in the Department of Plant Pathology at the University of Georgia in Tipton, Georgia. Dr. Kemerait received his BS in biology from Davidson College and a second BS in chemistry from the University of Florida. He also holds a PhD in plant pathology from the University of Florida. Prior to starting his PhD at the University of Florida in 1994, Dr. Kemerait served as an analytical chemist for several years. He began his career in plant pathology in 2000, joining the Department of Plant Pathology at UGA, working his way up to full professor in 2013. Dr. Kemerait is the recipient of numerous awards for his research and work in extension, including recognition from the National Association of County Agricultural Agents, the USDA Southern Region, and the Philippine Phytopathological Society. He's also the recipient of an Excellence in International Service from APS, Peanut Research and Education Award from the American Peanut Council, and was elected Fellow of the American Peanut Research and Education Society in 2015. His professional contributions are far-reaching, including serving as member and former chair of APS's Tropical Plant Pathology Committee, Chemical Control Committee, and Extension Committee. He has also previously served as the president of APS's Southern Division in 2010, and he served as section editor for APS's PDMR. He serves on the Philippines Phytopathological Society Board of Directors, the Med and Foods for Kids Haiti Board of Directors, and served as president of the Cotton Disease Council of the National Cotton Council of America, and is the immediate past president of the American Peanut Research and Education Society. Well, Bob, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So it's clear looking at the awards you've received, the contributions that you've made to various scientific societies and the committees that comprise those societies, and your publication record, that extension is really central to your identity. When did you get interested in extension?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I really feel like I was born to do extension. I feel like it's what I was called to do, and I'm really much enjoy my job and being able to do that. And so when did I become aware of extension? Probably not until I first learned about plant pathology, and it was about 1993 or 1994, and I saw what my advisor had done, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I was always looking for something in a career that there could be a service component. There could be an outreach component. And so while I didn't know it was called extension, I didn't know it was called plant pathology extension, I had an interest in that kind of work from a long time ago.
And it seems like a pretty dramatic pivot because prior to that, you had received 2 bachelor's degrees, but one of them was in chemistry, and you were an analytical chemist prior to starting off as a grad student in plant pathology. What made you pivot then as an analytical chemist and say, you know what, I think I want to pursue plant pathology?
I was working as an analytical chemist. I had pursued graduate school in chemistry for a little while and decided not to do that. And my laboratory that I worked in had a window, and I spent most of my time inside, and I would look outside that window. And I told myself, there's something out there that would be more fulfilling to me, more enriching to me. And I didn't quite know what it was, but at that point in time, I decided I'd start to look for it. And I had enjoyed plant sciences in the past. And I just started looking through course handbooks at the University of Florida and was working in Gainesville and came across plant pathology. And I said, I never heard of it before, but that sounds like what I want to be in life.
Do you find that like your experiences in studying chemistry positioned you well for understanding like fungicide efficacy and those kinds of things?
Absolutely. I think that chemistry helped me to understand to a different level than a lot of other people do as far as what the chemical effects of fungicides, the mixabilities, all of those things. I think it's a background that I don't necessarily use every day, but I think that both my background in botany and my background in chemistry give me a perspective that allows me to do my job to a degree different than if I hadn't had those. So yes, the chemistry I use in my work, it gives me a different perspective perhaps than others who didn't have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an easy line to connect a BS in biology to plant pathology and plant sciences, but maybe not as a direct line from A to B to go from chemistry to plant pathology. But I definitely see where chemistry would give you an advantage for understanding what you're seeing and understanding the efficacy of these compounds. So looking back at your research papers, I'm really in awe at how much you've worked on. Corn, peanuts, cotton, tomato, soybeans, mildew, late leaf spot, cotton leaf roll dwarf virus, root knot nematodes, the color virus, tar spot, cotton bacterial blight, aflatoxin. Is this just the life of an extension-focused research program, or are you the kind of researcher that enjoys so many spinning plates?
That's a great question. I really believe that it's the nature of being an extension specialist. And in my world of being assigned to the crops I have the opportunity to, anytime something comes along, which is in my wheelhouse, which is affecting growers, which is affecting their profitability, which is affecting their ability to produce the crop, then I have the opportunity to work on that. And I'm also very blessed at the University of Georgia, but with my colleagues from the Southeast and from across the country, is that while my expertise may not be completely in an area, I have a team to work with. I contribute to that team. And so if growers in Georgia are facing soybean rust, then I get to work with people who work on soybean rust. If we're looking at the cotton leaf roll dwarf virus, then I have those who work with it. So I'm extremely blessed. And there's just not just Bob, it's a group of individuals who work on these different diseases, nematode problems. I get to be a part of that.
That's great. And you get to meet other scientists and work with them, and you complement each other's skill sets. And that's clear too, looking at your record of publication. Now, Georgia is known for a couple of things. I would say, as an outsider, Georgia's kind of known for peaches, but I'm guessing cotton and then peanuts represent far larger number of harvested acres annually compared to some maybe 7,000 acres of peaches. Are cotton and peanuts in that order the most important commercial agricultural crops in the state?
Certainly, cotton is the number one grown crop. Peanuts is extremely important as well. My colleagues in vegetables, they would argue that if you put all of the vegetables and the crops that come within the vegetable, which include watermelons and cantaloupes, that the overall impact on that is more than, say, peanuts would be. But yes, as far as important crops, we are known as the peach state, but peaches are a fairly minor crop here, a traditional but minor crop. But peanuts and cotton, as far as agronomic crops go, are two of the most important in the state. Vegetable crops, blueberries, those crops are also very important, but outside my wheelhouse.
And I'm sure people outside the plant sphere would argue broilers and chicken eggs and dairy products and cattle represent a huge swath of,
Oh, absolutely.
of the economy there in Georgia and the Southeast as well. Of course, you have a lot of experience working with various plant pathogens of cotton and peanuts and other crops, but which one have you worked on longer? And I guess this is where I'm going to put you to a test of your loyalty. Do you feel like more loyalty to cotton or peanuts based on your many decades of work in Georgia and across the region?
I would say that as far as whatever corn, cotton, soybean, peanut growers have, it's whatever problem they face, I'm equally dedicated to. But there's no doubt that I've been working on peanuts since 1994 as a graduate student. I've worked on peanuts. Georgia's an important peanut state. I've worked on peanuts here. And also I've worked on peanuts internationally in a number of different countries. And I'm not biased towards any one crop, but if you look at the opportunities I've had, peanut has certainly been, with the number of diseases it faces, with the problems it faces, with the international importance on a smaller scale, where a pathologist from Georgia can make a bigger contribution, say, in developing countries. Peanut has been certainly the crop which has had the most impact on my career, for sure.
Now, I've seen you've been involved with the Philippines Phytopathological Society for a number of years, serving on their board of directors since 2018 and actively involved in the STRIDE aflatoxin program since 2002. Is that right?
But that would have STRIDE would have come out about I have to forget the read, but it's probably about 2012 most likely. And that program ended, so my CV may not read, but the program was for a couple years. So that project was with the USAID sponsored program in the Philippines.
And you've also been involved in agricultural development programs in Guyana and Haiti. Were those USAID programs as well?
Yes, they were. They were USAID. So a lot of the work in the Philippines has been USAID, but others has not been. It's just been direct collaboration with universities and the Department of Agriculture there. But the work in Guyana, the work in Haiti, some of the work in the Philippines has all been what were USAID programs.
And besides a pursuit of knowledge and helping to solve some of the pressing disease issues and mycotoxin production, what motivated your work internationally to work in Haiti, to work in Guyana, to work in the Philippines?
I guess the simplest thing is I've always had an interest in culture and in travel and in different places. So that's been a large part. My wife is actually from the Philippines. I met her in graduate school. She was working on a horticulture at the University of Florida. And the truth is, we were agreed to get married, but she wanted to go home. And I told her I would go home with her. And she said, that's just not real smart for an American guy like you. So we had an agreement 28 years ago that if she would stay here and work on her career with me, that I would do everything I could to participate and to train international students, and especially focus on Southeast Asia and the Philippines. So, to be honest, the impetus, the genesis for my international work came from a promise I made to my future wife that if we stayed together and she stayed here, I would do it. And since then, it's been a wonderful opportunity to work in many places with this special focus on the Philippines.
I can certainly appreciate and respect that commitment. Now, regarding your work in Haiti, I've seen that you've worked on some tomato chlorotic spot virus in Haiti and some other work on peanut. Have you traveled there extensively for that work, or have you just served as a collaborator here in the US, providing support to researchers there and training them here?
Yeah, I worked in Haiti for several weeks at a time every year from about 2007 to about 2017. So I did extensive work in Haiti. And also one of my graduate students, Dr. Abraham Fulmer, he did part of his dissertation work in Haiti. And so as a part of this USAID funded peanut innovation lab, would visit Haiti several times annually to participate with our team in trials to look at new varieties, to look at disease management, weed management, other things, to try and find ways to improve their production. And also, we partnered with a group called Meds and Foods for Kids, and they were taking this RUTF, ready to use therapeutic food made from peanuts. And that was to help to alleviate reverse starvation amongst the children in Haiti. And of course, peanuts is a major component of that. Our idea was, and the idea of Meds and Foods for Kids was, can we embrace peanut production in Haiti so that we create a market, but we also use those peanuts in a way that is beneficial to the malnourished children in Haiti. So it was a very rewarding opportunity and exciting.
Were those similar programs in Guyana then? And looking at kids and food security and things like that?
Great question. In Guyana, it wasn't so much for malnutrition, but it was recognizing that in the region we were in, they grew peanuts, they grew cassava. The farmers were looking for a market. And so we developed, and I was partnered with developing a snack program there where locally produced peanut butter, locally produced cassava bread was purchased by the government and served to the students and the indigenous students in that region, very poor region, is their snack in the food. So it served two things. It added a nutritious, delicious snack for the students, for the school children, but it also provided an additional market for the peanut producers in the region and the indigenous peanut producers. And it set up cooperatives with women in that area they actually made the peanut butter, they actually created the cassava bread, and then it produced a market for them as well. So really a fascinating nutrition, but also a value added to improve the lot of the farmers and their families in the region.
That sounds like a really rewarding experience. One of the things I think about with extension is just how stretched extension faculty are. I gave a list of some of the kinds of crops and diseases that you've worked on and continue to work on and develop diagnostic tools or help farmers and producers. And of course, I know some of your international work has wound down with USAID, but a question that arises is how do you justify to your local farmers the importance of international travel and international research when you could better be spending your time helping them come up with solutions?
That's an excellent question. And it comes up all the time. It doesn't come up as much now because they know me, they trust me. But the question could be phrased is, Bob, don't you have enough to do here? Don't we have enough problems on crops in Georgia and the region that why go somewhere else? And then the caveat to that is, are you taking all our secrets and giving them away? Are you helping them the competition against what we do? And they're fair questions. They're questions based out of concern about a general sincerity. But the first thing I reply to that is that we are better at what we do. I am a better extension specialist. I am better at what I do by seeing crops grown in different environments, working with different people, seeing different diseases, seeing different problems. It helps me to be better at what I do there, but also here. The second thing is that I'm not a consultant. I am a professor at the University of Georgia, and as such, international impact is a part of my job to be involved on an international scale. That is something the University of Georgia and other universities value greatly. The third thing I would say is that When we're talking about working in the Philippines or Cambodia or Thailand or Guyana or Haiti, the places that I have worked and continue to work, we are not at a level where we're talking about competition with American peanuts or American peanut farmers. We're talking about subsistence farmers trying to help them to better feed their families, try to improve their production, which is sold on a local level. And so it's completely different than if we were trying to work to improve production for competitors. And the last thing, the way I handle that is that I've taken county agents with me. I have taken growers with me when we have travels. And so, without exception, when they've been to Guyana with me, when they've been to Haiti with me, when they've been to the Philippines with me, they leave absolutely convinced that while we need you in Georgia, Bob, and we don't want you to be gone too long, the work you're doing is work that we would stand behind. We believe in the value of it. We see the value of it to those people. We see the value in what it does for your program. We see the value in what it does in making you better and more sincere in what you do when you're working with us. And
Right.
so it's a delicate question. It's a sincere question. But once we look at who I am, what I do, why I do it, where we do it, and take people to visit and see what we're doing, they come away as big supporters rather than detractors of the work.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks. One of the other aspects of that is that although there are some things that happen here regarding food safety in the United States and changes in food safety kind of rules and regulations over time and across administrations, generally, aflatoxin production and accumulation is not as much of a concern in our food systems as it is other places where they can't maybe afford to waste peanuts or don't have the kinds of
Right.
molecular screening techniques we have. So you have to test your screening and your tools where you actually have a high pressure of aflatoxin producing aspergillus in those crops.
That's right.
Speaking of like aflatoxins and Aspergillus flavus and other Aspergillus species, I feel like Aspergillus has become more of an issue in the One Health paradigm. Are you familiar with the One Health paradigm?
I am not familiar with it.
So it's how what we do in agriculture and what happens regarding wildlife disease is all connected to human health and things like that. For example, using azole-based fungicides or overuse of azole-based fungicides could have a downstream effect of antifungal resistance in Aspergillus and hospital environments and human health. Do you see a lot of fungicide resistance in peanuts and in cotton? In particular, I guess I'm interested in the peanuts aspect because of aflatoxin. And are we seeing just a higher incidence of azole resistant, aflatoxin positive aspergillus?
That's a great question. And I would say I don't know how to quantify a lot, but I would say that in my work in cotton, especially with areola mildew right now, and in our work with peanuts, especially with not so much Aspergillus flavus, but Aspergillus niger, and also with some of our leaf spots, certainly all of my recommendations, the concern for both preventative resistance strategies using FRAC guidelines and planning programs that take that into account, but also recognizing that the fungicides I recommend in cotton and peanuts today are different than they would have been when these fungicides first came out because resistance is a very real problem for some of our most important diseases. So as far as resistance in aflatoxin or Aspergillus flavus or parasiticus, I'm really not that sure. That's not something that comes up in my world too much. Those strobilurin problems might be, but certainly in Aspergillus niger, it is a major concern as far as how we protect a peanut crop.
So in some cases, are you having to resort to second and third line defenses? I'm aware there's other diseases that are non-fungal, you have bacterial and viral, but in terms of fungal diseases of peanuts and cotton, are you just dealing with a lot more fungicide resistance, broadly speaking, in those crops?
Primarily right now, it's the ones we've seen have been in the QOIs, or the strobilurins in both crops, and also a little bit of triazoles and tebuconazole with some of our peanuts. So there is, at least in the Southeast, a widespread concern. We do have other tools we can deploy. We can use the SDHIs and other fungicides, but if we're not careful, we're becoming more and more reliant on particular classes of fungicides, and we need to be very careful of that because we're not getting new classes and managing diseases is extremely important for our productivity and for the profitability for our growers.
No doubt that high throughput sequencing and genomics have added to our toolkits for molecular diagnostics and better understanding of pathogen biology. Do you think we're doing a good job in plant pathology programs? In particular, you have a really good 10,000-foot view of the Southeast because you've been really involved with the Southern Division of APS and you collaborate broadly across numerous states. Do you think we're doing a good job balancing organism-based approaches with molecular, like post-organism-based approaches? In my opinion, I feel like we tend to lean hard on one and sometimes forget about the other, but I'd love your perspective on this.
My perspective is that I'm seeing increasingly use of molecular techniques and molecular strategies as far as answering some of these questions. My way has always been applied, but classic, it's been just classical diagnosis, but I'm seeing increasing importance of molecular strategies and also as far as the University of Georgia and other places as well, increasingly hiring faculty who have the skill set to understand and use tools that are novel to me, but to them are very common. So I think that while in the past we've relied tremendously upon classical diagnosis, we're getting more and more with the molecular aspects. My only caution is that I think there's still critical need for those who can look at the fungus, so, who can look at a culture, who can look at the disease in the field, who can make a diagnosis, who can do the work that we've done for many years. It's not all or none. We need to keep both aspects, I believe, in terms of our diagnosis and in terms of understanding things like fungicide resistance as it develops in the future.
Absolutely. And I concur that we need to balance both those things because it's so powerful to have access to all this data. But at the same time, if we're training scientists that can't go out into the field and actually find the pathogen or know where to look, then that's also a problem. But I think that plant pathology programs and with the help of APS, I think we're looking at how we could provide well-rounded educations to the next generation of plant pathologists. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. But it's always good to reflect back on how we can improve these things. Now, as I said, you have a real pulse on the Southeast, working across corn and soybeans and cotton, peanuts, the list goes on and on. What do you see now as some of the biggest issues that are popping up in the Southeast in terms of plant pathogens? Or it's hard not to think about some of the catastrophic flooding we've seen recently in Texas and other areas, and how these adverse weather events are really impacting not only human lives, but certainly agriculture and forestry.
Certainly environmental concerns. In fact, we were talking about that today. We watch nervously in Georgia in the Southeast as hurricane season is upon us. We watch for that. And certainly that has had tremendous impact in my state and other states recently on agriculture. So that is and will be and continues to be. It seems like storms are becoming more frequent and more intense. Whether that's true or not, every time we're affected by them, we think that. But that's certainly the environment is a major concern. One of the biggest things right now for our producers is just profitability. Cotton has been a major crop in Georgia, and it still is, but international competition has led to increased problems with how we can produce cotton profitably in Georgia. So I would say that the environment is certainly a factor. I would say that continuing to be able to grow the crops that we grow and to grow them where it's sustainable for the farmers economically is an issue, but certainly we have our eyes looking at fungicide resistances as we have increasing number of fungal diseases that we're dealing with in my crops, whether it's areola mildew or target spot in cotton, or we're looking at the resistant diseases in some of the other crops. And now with soybean rust and tar spot in Georgia, the diversity of diseases we face, the concerns over the use of fungicides and also prolonging the use of fungicides all add to a very dynamic situation. We are never bored when it comes to plant disease management or nematode management in Georgia.
Coming back to the environment and hurricane seasons, I suspect, and this has been shown with a lot of the citrus diseases, that hurricanes serve as a catalyst for moving vectors of plant disease, whether we're talking about viruses or bacterial diseases. Do you think that holds true for a number of vectored pathogens across the Southeast?
Well, certainly there's recognition that storms and the storm tracks themselves could bring vectors, could bring spores that were not the putative reason for soybean rust in Georgia. And it's not been that important, but at one time we thought it might be, is on the winds of a tropical storm coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. So the concern is we're always aware, we're increasingly aware that we're seeing these changes in increasing frequency or all of those things is we need to be aware of what's the impact on both insect vectors and introduction of pathogens which we might not have had in the past. An example would be areola mildew. Ramulariopsis species, and the one that we have now is more common out of Brazil. The one we used to have is less common now. And so the question becomes how, when, where, why did it get here? And so we really don't know, but it's another example of an introduction or an increase of a pathogen which is causing problems we didn't used to have. And how did it get here? Why is it here? And of course, being aware of storms and that possibility is something that we follow closely.
And that areolate mildew caused by Ramulariopsis, that's a fungal pathogen of cotton?
Yes, Ramulariopsis, there's now two species we know in Georgia. One of them, Gossipii, was what we originally believed was all, but now there's another one that's come more commonly found in Brazil, and that now we're concerned, how did it get here? Why is it here? What's going to be the implication for that?
But both of them are on cotton?
Yes, both of them are on cotton. That's right. And the disease is indistinguishable with areolate mildew or Ramulariopsis blight or leaf spot, but the pathogens are two closely related fungi. And it seems that since about 2017, we've had a greater expansion and greater losses to this disease. And now we're scratching our heads and saying, is it because there's been a shift in the pathogen, the species? And if so, how did that happen?
I want to come back to the profitability discussion or topic as it relates to cotton. I can tell you that I know very little about cotton and cotton production, but I'm curious of the cotton that is produced and sold in Georgia and across the South. Is most of that exported as kind of raw cotton for downstream work abroad?
Yes, now there was a time in the past where a lot of that cotton was used in textile industries in the United States, but now most of the cotton that's produced here in the Southeast and in Texas is sold as ginned and sold as cotton, which is shipped to textile production around the world, mostly in Asia. And that the production here of textile plants and cotton is largely lost. And now what we're doing is we're competing for exports, the export market and exporting cotton. And with current cotton prices below 70 cents per pound of lint, it's very difficult for American farmers to grow at that level. And then when you start talking about areolate mildew, a disease they're not familiar with, and Bob says that we really recommend to use a fungicide, but now we got resistance to strobilurins and that azoxystrobin, which was cheap, we don't recommend anymore, then you can see how it becomes very snaky and very snarled because they're already trying to compete with world cotton prices. There's a new disease that's taking yield, resistance comes in, we can no longer spray the less expensive fungicide, and it becomes very frustrating for our growers.
I'm curious whether or not recent tariffs have impacted the profitability of cotton in terms of exports.
And we all know right now there's significant economic changes in international trade, which go on in the United States. And to my knowledge at this point, I'm not sure what impact it's had on, say, peanut exports or cotton exports. Certainly there's a possibility for that. But right now, our cotton farmers, the world prices of cotton, and especially in competition with our friends in Brazil, it simply makes it very difficult. It has less to do with what's happening in the recent past. And more importantly, is we've got just the cotton production in Brazil they're very good at it. And the cost of production there is less than what we have, and it makes it difficult to compete with other countries in production.
Because you did mention that regarding Ramulariopsis, that is an issue they're also dealing with on cotton in Brazil. So it's not like they don't have the same contemporary threats to production. They have lower costs. So therefore, the profit margin is larger.
Correct. In fact, when it comes to Ramularius blight, I think we call it areolate mildew, is they have to spray more often, but they're able to spray more often and more economically. I mean, I don't know if it's the cost of the fungicide, cost of labor, what it is, but they're having to fight similar things that we are and deal with similar things we are. But in the end, it remains wherever you're producing crops in the world for export, American farmers are competing with those markets.
Are viruses a real concern in cotton and peanuts, or are we dealing more with fungal diseases, nematodes, and bacterial diseases?
I would say one of the most exciting things in my career has just been looking as new diseases and new pathogens come in. And so for many years, I was worried about seedling disease. I was worried about boll rot, fusarium wilt, things like that. Now and then the target spot and the areolate mildew came in. And now most recently, we've got cotton leaf roll dwarf virus, which has come in, which we're interested in looking at. And then there's another virus in there that we're looking at for the terminal abortion, things like that. But mostly what we're looking at in cotton would be fungal diseases and nematode problems. And then secondary would be a little bit of bacterial, but now was something I never in most of my career had even considered, which would be viral diseases in cotton. Now, at least are gaining significant recognition what the potential might be. The same with peanuts. The peanuts, most of the diseases are caused by fungal pathogens. Fungal diseases are most widespread, but tomato spotted wilt virus, a single viral disease, it drives everything we do in peanut production. Everything we do from planting varieties to planting date to what we do has to be in line with minimizing the severity of that single disease because it takes no prisoners if we don't manage it carefully.
Oh, wow. Applied science and extension research are relatively easier sells to the general public because you don't have to spend too much time connecting what you do to the benefits growers and producers receive. Yet at the same time, extension, the land grant mission, and meaningful outreach are being devalued and underfunded. What's our solution there? Because I think it's easy for us to make the case that extension should be funded more so than it is now, that the land grant mission is still relevant. And how do we get people on board across all political spectrums? Because I feel like these kinds of things are under attack.
I was with the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Science at the University of Georgia today, Dean Nick Place, and we had just that conversation. He spoke about how publication records are very important, grants are very important, national, international grants. He spoke about how teaching is very important, but he spoke about how important it is, at least to our university and important to him personally, the extension efforts, the getting that information, getting to the stakeholders in Georgia. And so I was heartened because as we look about what it takes to become a number one plant pathology department or number one college of agriculture in the United States, sometimes the relationships that are built through extension, sometimes the extension efforts, it's hard to find how they actually play a part. And so it's rewarding to have administrators who see the importance and support us in that. I think that one of my biggest concerns, to be honest with you, in my career is that will there ever be someone who have a career like I've had that I've put such value in, I find such meaning in? Will there ever be someone who has a largely extension appointment like I do now? Most of our faculty come in now with 60/40 or 70/30 or 50/50, where I've been given the opportunity to have a large extension appointment. I've been given the opportunity to build those relationships with the growers and the commodity commissions. I've been given the opportunity, and I just wonder what it's going to take. Is that still valued, those to make that kind of difference? I believe that if we are going to do it, Matt, I believe that the opportunity comes from commissions, from farmer groups, from farmer associations, demanding that they have that kind of work, that kind of resource from land grant institutions, which are built upon research, teaching, and extension. I think it has to come from our stakeholders who say, we need this and we need you to continue to provide it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, commodity monies could get us partially there with support from these grower organizations, but the solution is to use their voices to justify the value of having those extension agents and extension faculty. Because if you show me an extension faculty at any land grant university, and I'll show you a beloved faculty member. They really are beloved by their communities because they are part of the community. They don't sit in some office and they're only ever engaging with the general public because that's who they care about and that's who they work for. And I wish more of the university did that. It's true that as new faculty come online, our appointments are more like 100% this, 100% that, and 100% that.
That's right.
And we all do a little bit of extension. We all do service and we all do teaching. We all do research, even if that's not officially our appointment. But I wish more faculty that weren't extension would understand that our relationship with the general public would be greatly improved if we all did a little bit. One of the things that I was impressed about is the sheer amount of service that you've given to our professional society, our shared one. And I'm aware that you're involved in several professional societies, but the American Phytopathological Society is the sponsor of this podcast. And you've done a lot for APS, serving as chair on several committees, as well as being a section editor for various APS publications. You were also president of the Southern Division, working your way up through the ranks to president back, 2010 or so. What got you interested in being involved with APS? And do you recall your first meeting? And tell me about that.
Yeah, I've been a member of APS since I became a graduate student in plant pathology, it was something that I always thought would be very rewarding. Coming from somebody who never even knew what a plant pathologist was, and then to find out there's this national organization and they get together and they have this shared interest in all these stories about how we got to where we are. And most people didn't ever plan to be a plant pathologist. So it was exciting to me. It was exciting to me to think about as a student to find an organization where we go and we could discuss and we could talk and put forth information on plant pathology. So that was a way, it was a naive but an idealistic way, but just to be a part of that organization was exciting to me. Over time, I've seen just the many benefits, the collegiality that comes, the support that comes, the opportunity to, with the journal articles or with the journals rather, even currently the editor of Phytopath News, I find that tremendously rewarding in terms of being a kind of a glue between the different components of what it means to be a plant pathologist this day. And so APS has been transcended, say the University of Georgia, the University of Florida has transcended the Southeast. It's allowed me to be a part of something bigger in a career that I love so much and a discipline I love so much. And through it, I've also had chances and opportunity with international experiences as well. APS has been very good to me, and I'm grateful to continue to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I saw that you were the recipient of Excellence in International Service from APS a couple years back now, which speaks to your commitment to international work and speaks to that kind of two-way relationship we have with APS is that they give us a lot as we develop throughout our careers, but we try to give back to them because we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely correct. And when I think about my students who've graduated, or when I think about students I was in graduate school with, and more often than not, belonging to APS, is a way to maintain professional ties in ways that we might not other have. So this meeting coming up in Hawaii, I'm just excited at the number of former students who will be there and students I was in school with, and also faculty members that I've gotten to know through soybean rust and southern rust and cotton leaf roll dwarf virus and various other things, tomato spotted wilt virus. The faculty members and who I don't see but once or twice a year, and usually it's at the APS meeting. So it's certainly a homecoming of sorts.
In an ideal world where you have unlimited funds, what do you see would most dramatically improve extension in the United States if you were to able to implement something over the next 5 years? What do you think we need to get to the next level, and what does that look like?
There has to be very tacit support for the aspects of extension that come in with building relationships and that. I remember there was a professor at North Carolina State University who I used to deal with sometimes, and he told me soon, just before he died, but he told me, he looked at me and I was new in my career. He said, Bob, you have to decide who you work for. Who is it that you work for? And he said to me, he said, I chose to work for the farmers, and that's made all the difference in my career. And so I would say that if I had all the money in the world and we had all the opportunity, how do we build extension up? We decide, we recognize what it means to work for the stakeholders, to work for the farmers, to recognize the value of relationships, to recognize the value of non-biased research-based recommendations, but
Mm.
also to recognize that it's not just extension, but it's cooperation with our colleagues in across the industry, whether it's in the seed industry, whether it's in the fungicide industry, whatever it is, to recognize that in extension, our partners are not just at the Georgia and Florida and Auburn and Alabama or Mississippi State. They're also the ones who work at the companies who produce the products that we need, who allow us to partner with them, the seed companies as well. So if had all the money in the world, it would be to develop an understanding that the relationships we build are important, to allow us to understand the relationships are not just between us and the farmers, the county agents, but they're across industries, across disciplines, across universities, and across industry, and to recognize that if it's in the best interest of our farmers to produce food and fiber, that should be very important in terms of our promotion process, in terms of our standing as far as a department in the United States.
I agree. The other aspect that I would add, and I hope you agree with, is that this idea that We as professionals with decades of expertise are teachers, yes, but we're also students in all these situations. We have as much to learn from the farmer with no more than a high school education than they have to learn from us, from our scientific research. And respecting that dissemination of information is a two-way street is critical for building that kind of strong cooperative relationship.
I've often say, and I'll say it again here, that the farmers are my heroes, whether the farmers are in the United States or in Georgia or Haiti or Guyana. They are my heroes because of what they put on the line to produce food and fiber for us. And I certainly, in my career, I have learned just as much or more from them as they ever have from me as a extension specialist.
Bob, it's been great talking with you today. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. There's nothing I like talking about more than extension and plant pathology. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm very grateful.
We've just heard from Dr. Bob Kemerait, professor of plant pathology in the Department of Plant Pathology at the University of Georgia, Tipton. As with our other episodes, be sure to check out the show notes for links related to Dr. Kemereit's research program. I'm Matt Kasson, host of Plantopia. Thanks for listening.